Hey there, welcome to my channel. And today we are going to talk about one of the most important documents in history, the Magna Carta. Now, if you're wondering why we're talking about a document in history class, well, it's because here at our channel, we like to make documentaries for adults. That means we go deeper into topics than you might have learned in elementary school. So, if you know the basics of the Magna Carta, this video will teach you all of the things that you never knew you didn't know. Let's get started. In June of 1215, King John of England sealed a document that would forever change the course of history. He didn't know it at the time, but what he had signed was the basis for constitutional government and individual liberties in not only England, but around the world. This document is known as the Magna Carta, or, in Latin, the Magna Carta Libertatum, meaning the Great Charter of Liberties. Now, while it may come as a shock to some people, King John was actually forced to sign this document. In order to understand why, we need to take a little journey back in time to see how King John got to be king in the first place. John became king in 1199 after the death of his brother, Richard the Lionheart. Yes, that Richard. If you've ever heard the song about him, you know the one. Richard was a medieval warrior and probably one of the greatest military commanders in the history of England. But unfortunately, he died during a siege in France after getting injured and being treated poorly by his own men. When word got back to England that Richard was gravely wounded, his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, tried to rally her son John to come help him. But when John arrived, Richard was already dead. Now, technically, John was supposed to swear fealty to his other brother, the heir, before taking the throne himself. But he likely saw this as an opportunity to take power for himself and went ahead anyway. And this action set up the conflict that would eventually lead to the creation of the Magna Carta. The barons were powerful nobles who held land in England from the king and in return provided him with military service. They were also supposed to advise the king on matters of governance and policy. The problem was that King John wasn't really interested in advice and instead wanted complete power. He raised taxes to fund his lavish lifestyle and frequent wars, and granted land to his loyal followers, passing over the barons and their sons in the process. He also broke a tradition by refusing to allow the next in line to inherit land after their father died. Instead, he forced them to purchase the land from him, which left many barons in debt. And then there was the whole issue of the French throne. You see, back in 1154, Henry II had inherited the Duchy of Aquitaine from his wife, Eleanor. At this point, it was more of a possession of England than a part of France, but it still held significance. However, John wanted to assert his power over Aquitaine and prevent any future French claims on the throne. And so he began attacking rebel lords in the region, including his own nephew, Arthur of Brittany. Arthur was captured and supposedly killed by John, making many of the barons believe that the king had gone completely mad. These actions caused the barons to rebel. They were losing land, losing money, and they felt that King John was destroying the country through his constant warfare. So in May of 1215, 25 barons rode to the king and demanded that he sign a document guaranteeing their rights and limiting his power. John refused, of course, leading the barons to flee to the city of London and raise an army. After just a few weeks, John's forces were defeated, and he was forced to meet with the barons at Runnymede in June. It was here that he agreed to sign the Magna Carta. Now, it's important to remember that this charter did not establish Parliament, nor did it protect the rights of ordinary people. It was simply a list of grievances between the king and the barons. In fact, the Magna Carta doesn't even begin with the phrase, "we the people." Instead, it starts, "In the name of God, King John," showing whose interests the document was protecting. There were 63 clauses in total, many of which dealt with land rights and royal procedure. But several stood out in terms of their importance. First, Clause 39 established the right to due process, stating that no free man shall be seized or imprisoned or outlawed or exiled or deprived of his rights or possessions. nor shall suffer the judgment of his peers, or be condemned or punished unless by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. Basically, it meant that the king could not punish someone without charging them with a crime and giving them a fair trial. Next, Clause 40 stated that the king's courts must operate promptly, meaning that if a case was delayed too long, the defendant would be freed. Then Clause 48 guaranteed the right to travel freely throughout the kingdom, stating, "There shall be no scutage or aid payable on the roads either for ourselves or for our men or our horses for any military service within the kingdom." Scutage was a payment that peasants had to pay instead of performing military service. So this clause meant that they could not be forced to pay to transport themselves to a battlefield. But while these are important clauses, the Magna Carta is most famous for Clause 61, which placed the king under the law. Before this document, the king was considered above the law and could do whatever he wanted. But now it was clear that no one was above the law. But even this clause came with limitations. As we mentioned earlier, the Magna Carta was created to protect the rights of the barons and their land. And so the protections afforded to the barons were extended to no one else. So while the document is considered a cornerstone of individual liberty, it only protected the liberty of a very small group of people. Even so, the Magna Carta was an important step forward. The idea that the king was not above the law spread slowly at first, but eventually took hold across Europe. It was referenced in the United States' Declaration of Independence and has been used to protect the rights of people against oppressive governments ever since. After signing the Magna Carta, King John realized that he had made a huge mistake. He begged the barons to let him out of the agreement, but they refused. So he tried to have them excommunicated by the Pope. When that didn't work, he fled to Normandy in disguise. While there, he learned that the barons were coming to arrest him and forced him back to England. They met him halfway and forced him to agree to another set of reforms, which he broke almost immediately upon their departure. The barons quickly returned to find him in violation of their agreement, but he refused to listen and prepared for war. While gathering troops, he fell ill and died in October 1216. Many believe that he was poisoned, but this is not certain. He was succeeded by his 9-year-old son, Henry III, under the supervision of a regency council made up of 5 barons. The young king agreed to uphold the provisions of the Magna Carta and went on to rule for 56 years. In the centuries following the signing of the Magna Carta, it was rewritten several times as the clauses became outdated or were taken out of context. The original document can still be found at the British Museum, where it is being preserved. While it's true that the Magna Carta didn't protect the rights of everyone, it's still an important document in history. It was the first time that a government leader was held to account by their subjects, and it paved the way for future documents such as the United States' Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Do you think the Magna Carta was an effective document? Why or why not? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.